Okay, I'm live and there's the video. Looks like we've got about a 10-second delay. So we're starting over again from scratch, and rather than repeat all of the missions we had done before in Save 1 to get all of the science so we can get back to developing where we were, which was trying to do a rescue, that would be kind of boring because that's just, not coding. And this is all about coding what I'm doing here. So instead, I am going to start over again. One of the rules in software engineering is throw one out. So I have saved the version of the code off for reference so I can pick up the math. And we're going to start over again, and I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm going to make a few decisions in a way that will be simpler implementation, sacrificing some of the original goals. And I bought into Kevin's idea, which I agree with, of when you import a package, it shouldn't touch the global namespace. That's a great idea for real software. In KSP, at our scale, I think I'm going to relax that. And I'm going to allow my packages to touch the global namespace as long as I am careful about how I name things, which means often there will be a prefix, which is the package name. The other thing is the whole minification versus compilation. I'm going to compile the Kerbal script code down to KSM. It may or may not save me space, but it leaves me feeling free to use comments and white space and good names. So, with that said, let us start a new game, which I'm going to call Farsyte Save Take 2. And I've got my flag there set to the KOS flag. There's only one change I'm going to make to the difficulty. That is, we are going to be running 2,000 instructions per update inside KOS. Once we get in, I will select all connectivity. There's a problem with the first deployment. Before you get the radio signal, or the radio antenna, I literally can't do anything with KOS on the launch pad. Oh, and I've got KOS for all going. So there's that. Otherwise, we're basically on normal difficulty. So just to review, it's all the normal difficulty sliders. We've got reentry heating, we've got normal resources, everything's 100%. We're not requiring spending money to unlock individual parts when you research. That's a harder thing. It's for people who want to spend a lot of time grinding funds, which is perfectly okay. Especially if you're automating things. Once you've automated sending a Kerbal to orbit, you just keep doing those contracts over and over again. I'm tempted to bump the starting funds because, as I said, getting funds is not hard in this game. Once you've got things automated. Very early, it's going to be a stumbling block, but later on, it's not a problem. I could just bump the starting funds and have it be something I don't think about, or I can automate and just run it between streams. Normal. Check it if you want. So I am not sure how that impacts KOS. Clearly at normal difficulty that's off, so you can normally control probes even without signal. I prefer that way, just to make it more of a game than a ground control simulation. So we're accepting the defaults. Farsyte Take 2, starting now. I mentioned to my wife I was going to try to keep this under half an hour because I'm only going to show the one thing. And we will see. We're at 5 minutes already and I'm just getting into the game. We're going to use the all connectivity for now because otherwise we won't be able to handle this launch. I will try to turn that off later. We have 25,000 funds. And it is time to think about our first mission. So let's Go to Mission Control. Our first thing is to gather some scientific data, and I'm going to pick up launch our first vessel just in case we launch. We can only do 2 contracts. Later on we will want to escape the atmosphere and orbit Kerbin, and more contracts are going to appear. So our first vessel, since we're just going out to the launch pad to collect some science, we don't need much. I may be able to... Nope, there's no saves. I actually don't have access to saves from other games. You can do that. I didn't do it this time, so oh well. We have to build a new spacecraft, and this is going to be... I've been trying to use whimsical names, so the name of the spacecraft is Nervously Mushy Land. I got a bunch of adverb, adjective, noun names. I just spewed out a bunch of random ones, and I looked through there, and I didn't have to go very far to find some ones that were kind of cute and worked. And this is Nervously Mushy Land. I'm going out and I'm getting science from the launch pad. What do we need? Well, we need a command pod, because you always have to have a command pod, and we want to get some science. So let's grab a mystery goo container, let's stick it on the side there. That's all we really need. Don't need a pilot. I'm going to send out the scientist, because he's going to go run around and gather science. Not really important who I do. They're all level 0. So let's save this. The other thing is that we are running KOS Anywhere, so all of my command pods have 100 kilobytes of disk space locally. That's more than usual. The first parts we will get will have, eventually will start out at 10K, and it costs money to upgrade them. 100K means I don't have to be quite as obsessive about compressing things down, but I still want to have some pressure. We need to have some vessel code here. We'll get into what this is in a moment once we get out of the landing pad. Actually, let's look at this. I will do it now. Boop. So when the vessel boots, it's going to run this boot.ks script. And the only way to update this script when you're playing the game, you have to come all the way back to the launch, to the VAB, and under KOS there's a thing that says reread the boot volume. So we want boot.ks to be absolutely minimal. Let's not look at what it's doing yet. The only thing important for us is lazy global off changes the language so that it doesn't do lazy globals. Yay! So let's start with here. Let's rename this off to the side so we don't use it. Rename. Okay, so if we just roll a new mission out onto the launch pad and we haven't written any code yet, what we want it to do is every 5 seconds I want it to give the name of the ship and say no mission code found. So, and that will refresh on the HUD every 5 minutes. It'll refresh in the terminal every 5 minutes if that's open. So boom, or every 5 seconds. So this will be pretty obvious, and that means I need to open up the terminal, hit Control C, and putter around. Obviously, I am going to need to have a function called say. So we're going to have some sort of standard library because everybody wants say. So the core of the work we're going to do today is this standard library. We're going to start off with say, which is just we're going to do a HUD text to display the text, and it may echo to the terminal. That's fine. I also want to be able to pass a list. So if it's a string, we're going to display it. If it's a list, we're going to display each element of the list. So that gets us our say something. But we need to do more in our standard library. I want the standard library to provide the ability for us to say, use a package. We'll call it load file. I want to say load file something or other and have it find that package and load it into memory so it's running. And that's going to take a couple of steps. Let's see here. Okay, so load file says, given the file name, we're going to update the copy of the file on the vessel. So we're going to keep a local copy of these files that we're using, these packages. So we're going to update our local copy from the archive, and that's going to return the name of the copy that we've got locally, and they're going to use run path to run it. Real simple. Update file given the name of a script, name of a package. Package might be Go. So again, this is trying to load the Go package. We're going to do a find file on go.ks. So find file will look in various places. We want to check first to see if the vessel's providing one. If it isn't, we're going to check to see if the vessel's parent directory is providing one. And if it isn't, we're going to check and see if it's in our library. And if it's not in our library, we're going to try just looking on the local storage. So find file will do that. Find file says, look in this dir path, and if it's there, then return it. And if it doesn't find it anywhere, just return the original name. So the sequence we go through is we're saying load file go, and it says find file go, and it will look in various places. And in this case, it should find it in the library because I don't have a Go script for this vessel yet. And it should say, oh, it's in the library, and that update file says find it, and it's called go.ks, and now create a file name called go.ksm on the vessel and use this to compile it. So this will get us a compiled KSM file in the disk on the vessel for that package, and then we run it here with run path. And that requires some variables, libdir and homedir and dir path. Those are going to be local for now. If necessary, I'll make them global, but following the you aren't going to need it rule, YAGNI, I'm not going to make those global until they're needed, but all of this so far is needed. If I wanted to do a local function, it gets a little harder. I have to put this whole thing in a namespace, and then I would export load file by saying global load file is, and load file now becomes a delegate instead of a function. I have no idea what the implications of that are for runtime. So for now, global functions and local things. For the standard library, I'm not prefixing the names with anything because everybody has them, and everybody will know that find file, update file, load file, and say do these things. So now we go back here. Here's the Go script, which is going to use say. The Go script can assume that the standard library is already loaded. How do we get there? Well, let's look at our boot script. The boot script is starting off when we roll out to the launch pad. There's nothing on the vessel but the boot script. So we can't use load file yet. We have to run standard library. But to do that, first we need to get a copy of it. So if we are connected to the archive, we're going to run compile, and this compile gets us a local copy of the library compiled, and then we're going to run it, and now we can use load file go, which we just saw in the library, and that will run our Go script, and this time it's going to run no mission code found. Let's try it. So we've got boot.ks here, so it'll run the boot script. Launch. And there's our nice little notification. Nervously Mushy Land, no mission code found. That tells me that I need to go into the archive and create a home directory for Nervously Mushy Land and put a file go.ks into it. so that it can actually run it. And I will just open the terminal on here. And it's going to try that over and over. Well, it's not actually retrying the load. I have to manually reboot to get it to look. So let's pull this over here where I can see it when I've got my editor turned on. Now recall I renamed this out of the way earlier. So inside the archive I've got a directory called Home, and under it is the directory for the mission, Nervously Mushy Land. And then I renamed this file out of the way, and let's put it back in place. There. So now I have a go.ks. And now if we go over here, I can reboot. There, and there's our script running. Nervously Mushy Land, gather all available science, then recover the pod. And I'm going to go ahead and start gathering some science here. Let's close this term. Actually, having that keep coming up is going to be irritating, so I'm going to interrupt my script so it will stop repainting the HUD. So, gathering science. We want to observe the goo. And take a crew report. And I need to get a couple EVA reports. So first off, when I'm just hanging out on the vessel like that, my EVA report is from the launch pad. I don't think a spacesuit was entirely necessary to get here, was it? Keep experiment, and I'm going to stuff that into the pod. Jeb and Bob and so on, our Kerbals can only carry one EVA report at a time. So I can't just, go out and collect a whole bunch and come back. I have to bring back one report at a time. So there's the launch pad. Let's go get a report from the crawler way up there. It's kind of close. Now, that's our walking speed, under a meter per second. Jeb does not walk fast. If I hold down the shift key, he kind of jogs faster. I can go up here and put in a ×4 physical warp. So time inside KSP is running 4 times as fast. So he's kind of, yeah. Jeb would be confused if he was actually moving this fast. So where this, there's all sorts of artifacts that have always been there for me in KSP, no matter what computer I'm running it on. But we're now clearly on the crawler way, and we can do an EVA report. This is another 2.4 science. We're going to need over 10 science for what we want to do. Now I could recover Bob and then separately go back and recover the vessel, but I kind of like the idea of, oh no, let's do that. Let's show how that's done. So for Bob, we're just going to say recover vessel. Oh, and I can turn off my editor. So I got 5 science for recovery of a vessel that survived a flight. Let me write that down. Okay, and I got, obviously, the parts that I recovered. I just recovered Bob. So he had his parachute and his EVA pack, so I got back the funds for those, so I'll be able to reuse those parts. And Bob got an experience point. But Nervously Mushy Land is still sitting out on the launch pad, so we're going to go take our crane out there, and we're going to bring back the vessel. And what we see is that we got a crew report from the launch pad, which got us another 1.5 science. We got an EVA report from the launch pad, which we stuck in there, and that's another 2.4 science. And and a mystery goo observation from the launch pad for 3 science. I forget, did I get my EVA report from the crawlerway? We'll have to find out. So here we're in the science, we've got 13.9 science. And in the archives, we can see that we did indeed get our EVA report from the... Oh, we didn't get our EVA report from the crawlerway. Well, that's no good. We'll have to get one of those later on. We know there is one. I betcha I hit the don't save button. I'll have to go back and look later. But we want more science. That's actually enough to do most of what we want, but I'm going to go grab some science from the runway as well. Now, in the spaceplane hangar, I don't think I can open... Well, let's try it. I can select the VAB here, and I could open Nervously Mushy Land. And there it is. And this time, since Bob got to go, we're going to send Bill out with this one. Okay, same drill. Let's turn off the software, observe the goo, and take a crew report and an EVA report, keep experiment. So this is basically the same drill we did on the launch pad. Now, I think I can head off to the side of the runway here. I think that's a different biome down there. So X1 time, EVA report from Kerbal shores. So that's got us another 2.4 science. Keep experiment. Now, because I'm worried that I maybe goofed up earlier with the crawler way, I'm going to go back to our capsule here and get back in it so we can recover all at once. This is my preferred way of doing recovery. So recover everything at once. Okay, that gets us a crew report from the runway for 1.5 science, and an EVA report from the runway for another 2.4 science, EVA report from shores for another 2.4 science, and a mystery goo from the runway for 3 science. And we recovered everything all at once. And Bill is ready for his next assignment. So we started out with 25,000 funds before we did this. We're now up to 48,000 because we satisfied a contract. We haven't launched our first vessel yet, so you have to actually fire your engines to launch the vessel. But we did get some science. If we go back to mission control, we see from the archives that we had 2,240 funds in advance and another 4,160 for completion, and it gave us science and reputation. That's great. And I have a few minutes here, so we have 23 science. This first tier that we want to pick up is 5 each. We could have done this just based on the launch pad. But what I want to do is when I build a mission, I want to go use that mission to gather all the science that mission can gather. So we may do several launches. And again, If it looks like it's just going to be repeating the same thing, I'll just do it off stream. So we're going to Research Engineering 101, which gets us a decoupler, a thermometer so we can get more science, and 2 antennas. Communitron 16 is you have to extend it for it to work. I think it takes more energy. And then the 16S, which is just passive, it's surface mount, it's passive, it just stays there all the time, it's always on. I think it's shorter range. We'll check out those the first time we use them. There's our research. And basic rocketry gets us a liquid fuel engine. This is a steerable engine. It's got a little bit of control over where it's thrusting. We've got a larger solid rocket booster and a fuel tank. Now, we haven't even launched with the solid rocket booster that we started with yet. So in theory, I should have done this science, and even before doing research, I should have put together a rocket that used just these parts. But ain't got time for that. I'll do that rocket, but I want to do the research first. There we go. So after doing our research, we still have 13 science left, where we need 15 and 18 and 20 for this stuff. So we need to go gather a bunch of science on our next mission. But that's as far as we need to go today. I am going to drop a quick save, and this is going to be called quick save. Well, yeah, just call it quick save. Hold on. There. Okay, so we have done a save, and we can move on with our lives. And I think that's all I'm going to do for this stream, which clocks in at 27 minutes and something. So I'll see you in the next one, where we will actually launch.